Okay, here, let's get started then. So the first question that I've shared with our panelists, we have 6 of them, and I sent it to them over the weekend. The first question is, in a 2-minute answer or so, can you give a high-level description of how you go about creating and sharing content to promote your business or your client's business? And we'll start with Maddie on this one. Maddie, if you can address that question, please.
Sure. So just to reiterate, I'm Maddie Osman. I run an agency called The Blogsmith that does B2B, that we serve B2B tech brands with SEO content. And so the question of how to go about creating and sharing content to promote my business or a client's business. So I have this insanely long checklist. It depends on the nature of the content we're creating, but there's about 60 different tasks on it. And I'm breaking things down into really granular little things. So first of all, phases like we got to get the topic approved if it's for a client. We've got to create an outline and make sure that the writer's on the right track. Once the outline is approved, we then have to go into the drafting stage and make sure that we're following certain style rules and implementing SEO correctly. So there's a lot of different sub checklists of my checklist. Then there's an editing stage where another person takes over, and they may then send it back to the writer for additional edits. At that point, once the content is exactly the way we want it, we send it out to the client, who may have additional edits, and it may go back into that stage. And then at the end of the process, and this might kind of play into another question that you're going to ask, but I have someone on my team who also helps with uploading the content to WordPress, and there's a lot of different things that they pay attention to there in order to make sure it's effective from an SEO perspective, from a user experience perspective. And then what I was going to say is I also am now implementing a step for rank tracking. So that same person who does the CMS upload is also then going into our tool that we use for rank tracking to add in all the keywords that we've attempted to optimize for. And then that's something that clients have access to from a dashboard perspective. And then the last thing I'll say is there's also a step way earlier on for keyword research that, you know, everybody from who goes after that has to pay attention to and implement.
Thank you. Very methodical, long list to make sure that everything gets done. I like that. Jason, talk about how you and your colleagues go about creating and sharing content to promote your business.
Yeah, and again, I'm Jason Coleman from Paid Memberships Pro. It's a membership plugin for WordPress, and we have about a team of 4 people who are writing at any given time on our websites and things. The primary form of content marketing that we do is like question and answer style posts. So almost any professional in your course of business, you're going to answer questions, whether like you're a doctor, people are coming in, or if you're doing web development, your customers are asking you questions by email. We have people in our support forums, even like bad reviews. I go on even like this meeting itself, you're recording it. I'm going to download that VOD. I can send it to my team to kind of transcribe and take my words out and turn it into blog posts answering these very same questions we're talking about on the call. So we've been doing more of that lately with videos that we're making. But we basically pick a question hey, this is a good answer that would, be useful to share in the future or share for our customers. And we put it out in blog form or email. We're really big on, repurposing the content. So I think the primary target is we have a blog that we push all our content to, and then a lot of that becomes email newsletters or, videos and social media posts. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of what we've been doing lately. I think we made
that's helpful.
Yeah, we have a similar checklist. I don't think we have 60 items, but like Maddie said, we definitely we do an outlining stage, and outlines get approved first by people further up, and then we kind of have some people either write the content, or what we've been doing lately. Even I'll just wax for a few minutes on video and send that video to someone to transcribe and write. Then they write it up, someone else edits it. It kind of comes back to me for approval and then gets pushed out. Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you. Eric, tell us about your process, please.
Well, again, I'm Eric Karkovac. I'm in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I'm a freelance writer and web developer. Um, my process is really dependent on the client. Like if I'm writing for Specky Boy, where I do most of my writing these days, it's more of a autonomous process. I'm not really told the subject. I can really just pick from my experiences, and that's something I really enjoy. It's like I may be facing a challenge in one of my projects, or I may have a client that had a specific functionality that they wanted to create, and I kind of go through the process of how I help them achieve it, or just even my own process of learning how to do something new. A lot of my stuff is based on freelance web design as well, just the topics of dealing with clients and procuring new clients, and just that kind of thing. So, and how to run a business, and during COVID and during everything else we're going through here. So a lot of what I do is really just based on what I'm going through at that moment. I'll write about it. If I'm writing for a company like Envato, they like to send detailed, like a syllabus of what they want, and I will, put in the keywords that they've researched for me. They'll, want specific things, like it's specific products of theirs to be featured. So we go through that. And then if I'm writing for, just the average consumer who wants a website, I will also go through things that are trending in the industry, like why you need SSL on your website, or maybe you need a certain software from WordPress for membership sites, like what Jason does exactly. And so I try to target it to my audience, and depending on the client, it can go through several revisions through different people, or more likely it's just me reading it 20 times over to make sure I didn't leave anything out, and that I've kind of optimized it for SEO.
Thank you. So we're going to get into kind of the purpose or target for creating content, and really I'd like you to each to talk about what specifically you're targeting. Is it sales? Is it just sales? Is it brand awareness? Is there something else? And maybe in your answer, if you could talk about, how you prioritize one goal over the other. And just to change it up a little bit, Jason, I'm going to start with you first, please.
Sure. So we definitely, like I said, we do like a QA approach to a lot of our content. So we're definitely thinking of SEO. If someone types the title of my blog post into Google as a question, like, will my post come up as an answer? So we have that in mind, but the bigger picture of what we're trying to do is build trust with our consumers, our potential customers, and just other people tangential to our business. We also do outreach to developers who may or may not become our customers, and other kind of influencers, that are related to WordPress plugins. And some of that comes like Gary Vaynerchuk has a book called Jab, Jab, Right Hook, which I think is like a really good metaphor that like the jabs are like giving away valuable free content. And really only every once in a while should you have like a big ask. The right hook is like, hey, I've been giving you all this great free content. I've told you how to do all, I fixed all your problems. You should know that we also charge for this thing. And I think in a lot of business, like if you're building trust with a customer over and over again, you could almost sell them anything after a while. They'll buy the same content that they read on your blog in the form of a book. Things like that. They've been watching your videos, but they want easier access to it. They want access to each other. So there's all kinds of things that we see other people do. And that's basically what we do. We're giving away a lot of stuff for free. And then we say, hey, the real easy path is to pay us to become a paying member and gain access to everything. So here's a trick that helps with figuring out like specifically what to write about or how to focus your content. So sometimes we might have a blog post with a title like how to start a membership site with Paid Memberships Pro. And one thing we can do is like, when we come up with an idea is like, is there a more generic version of this blog post? So like a better version of that would be how to start a membership site with WordPress, not because it is self-promotional. We're almost always talking about our own product, but if possible, if our, if we can write content that anyone using any membership plugin can use, like that's even better content. Like it kind of has a wider net. And maybe even a better version of that just might be like how to start a membership site. So that's kind of a bad example, but any specific thing that you write about, sometimes you can find like, don't put like the name of your product in the title of the blog post, kind of, you can still focus and write about and say that's like the solution we happen to be going through when we set something up. But that, like I said, that title is going to go out into the interweb in, Google searches and everywhere. And the people aren't specifically always looking for your product. They're just looking for solutions. A bonus trick is that the opposite of that also works sometimes. So sometimes I feel sometimes people are worried about being too specific with their blog posts. An example like that might be like a post titled, how to get an SSL certificate for free. And if you were writing that, you would cover Let's Encrypt as a way, but you would have to write, how to set up Let's Encrypt on any kind of server or any kind of host. And instead of doing that like general purpose, big, all-encompassing 5,000 word count post, like do one that's just how to set up a free SSL certificate on CentOS 8, which is a type of host. And so sometimes getting more specific will be better because people who are banging their head against the table trying to figure out how to get certificates to work in CentOS 8 specifically are going to be searching on that keyword and they'll come to your blog post. So I kind of gave conflicting tricks there, but sometimes when you have a topic, you can make it more general and that casts a wider net, or sometimes you have a topic and it's kind of hard to write about it in the general sense, or you're just going to have like 5 different answers and you can just make it, hey, how to get from A to B. Like that's it. This post, this content is all about that. So that's the kind of thing that we go through. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. And the goal is to build trust, to your point, so that once they trust you, you can sell them a variety of products that answer their needs.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they trust you.
Yeah, I feel like we use this kind of strategy in our email newsletters too. Like if you have like a 5 email series, you kind of set up a problem and solve that problem, and then another problem they might have and solve that problem. But if someone's come to our blog like 5 times and they read our content on like how to choose a membership level, how to think about pricing, how to think about hosting, when they're like, oh, I also need a membership plugin, you're like, oh, well, I really liked your free advice on these 5 things that weren't necessarily related to memberships. So I'm in the market for one, now they're ready to pay, or any of the other products that we kind of sell through the site. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Maddie, talk to us about what you're targeting when you're creating content, maybe both for your own business, but also touch on what you're doing with your clients.
Sure. So I'll start with, I have this side business of sorts. It's like a print-on-demand store for people who like to travel and have a sense of humor. And my whole strategy with driving traffic to that site was SEO content. And at one point, I have been very much neglecting that website, but at one point, just doing that and like a little bit of social, like organic stuff, we were getting like 10,000 visitors a month. And so for me, it's definitely, I'm targeting traffic. I'm targeting relevant traffic because not just any traffic is worth going after. I think that when I'm creating content for my clients, the end goal is always we want to get conversions. We want to make money. But there's usually a secondary goal. And it might be, we want to book appointments with leads. We might want to establish thought leadership, which is kind of what Jason was talking about. We might want to get somebody to buy a specific product. So you have to keep that in mind when you're creating content. But I think another thing that you really have to think about is based on the keywords that somebody's using to get to your content, what does that say about their readiness to buy, or what they're looking to achieve, I guess, with the content that they're searching. And so because not everybody is going to be ready to buy the minute they go to your website, I think it's a good idea to create content for different stages of the buyer's journey. So when we're talking about what stage is someone in based on what keyword they use, if it's something like let's just talk about Black Friday or whatever. So people might be looking up lists of, the 10 best Black Friday TV deals or something like that. If they're looking for a list, like a comparison, that's a pretty good signal that they're ready to buy. If they're looking up your brand name coupon code, that's another really good signal. And you probably want to own that query so that you could give them the discount that you want to give them, or none at all. If it's something that's more like how to, we call that informational intent. So these are people who could be ready to buy sometime soon. They might even be ready to buy now, but they're still kind of pondering the options. They're not far enough along to be like considering brands necessarily. It's more like, do I have a problem I need to solve? So I think that when it comes to creating these different, or creating content for these different types of intent and these different types of buyer stages, the way that I think about it is, what like categories do we have on this blog, and how do each of those speak to the different stages that a buyer might be in, and trying to sort of spread it out when you're creating a content calendar or when you're debating new topics. How do I have equal coverage on all those things so that I can essentially reach someone at any point?
Thank you. That was very helpful. And then lastly, I'll ask you, Eric, you've talked about writing for both third-party sites and services like Envato and Specky Boy, but also writing for yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you decide what to write for in terms of a goal or a target.
Well, when I'm writing for Specky Boy, that tends to be a lot of clicks and shares is what we're looking for, because it's ad based. We do some sponsored content once in a while as well. So we're trying to get people, we're trying to become a really authoritative spot for, like, especially WordPress information. We also like to draw people in with like resources like free icon kits and just items that they can grab and use in their own projects. And while they're there, try to provide some education and some advice on running a business, or breaking down a new trend in the industry that people are seeing. A lot of times I love to look for evergreen stuff. I think the freelance aspect of it really does, I wrote an ebook in 2013 and I looked through it again recently, and it's like most of the advice hasn't changed much, because it's just running a business doesn't change to the point where it's revolutionized in that time. The technology we may use will change, but the fundamentals of running a business are still very much the same as they were back then. So we like to try to plant stuff for SEO, and try to come up in those trending topics over time, that when someone searches for, like recently I did a tutorial on how to update your WordPress site through a zip file, that you can do that with plugins and themes now. That was something that a year later somebody may still be looking for that. We're looking to be at the top of the heap when they're searching for that. If I'm writing for just consumers, I'm looking for things that every business owner is going to see as a challenge. Where do I get hosting? How do I make sure my website is secure? How do I develop a content strategy that is viable for the audience I have? So it really depends on what the subject matter is, but I do definitely look for things that are going to last more than a week, instead of like a hot take on a subject that no one's going to be thinking about in a little bit. I try to focus on the things that are going to be, the questions that need to be asked time and time again from the audience. And, most of the sharing is social media. Specky Boy does a great job of with their email newsletter. And we also do a weekly roundup post of things, not only that are on our site, but, some web design articles from around the web. That way we get to share content, and we kind of make friends with some other sites that way as well. Look for kind of that mutually beneficial stuff that helps spread things around the community.
Yeah, I've certainly seen some of your writings, I think on Specky Boy, mentioned in the post status newsletter that comes out. So I see you're getting value from that. I want to ask the three of you to talk about how you decide how much time to spend on self-promotion content. And I guess I'll ask you to cast your mind back as well to really when you were just starting to get started with content and self-promotion, and when you're growing your business and there's a lot of work to do just to get the business off the ground. At what point did you get to the point where now I need to promote it beyond what else I'm doing? I got to start to do stuff online. So with that, I'll ask Maddie to lead us off on answers, if you would, please.
Sure. So like I said before, I've outsourced a lot of my social media content creation. And if I were to quantify the time my team spends on that, it's probably maybe 2 hours between sort of like the general like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook type content they're putting together, and then the Pinterest scheduling that happens. I also use Design Pickle to create creative assets. So that's not something that like my team spends time on, but they're submitting requests for if we need anything custom. And it's an awesome resource, honestly, for anybody who's considering, adding custom graphics, whether it's for clients or yourself. And then my strategy with blogging, it's been a little bit stunted recently just because, again, the whole agency fallacy of spending time on everyone else's stuff but your own. But when I started, I would say that I was focusing on getting one long form blog post out per month for the Blogsmith. And it was probably, 2,000 words minimum, really like deep dive into a topic. And that might take me 5 or 6 hours to put together. So yeah, I mean, it probably isn't too much more than 10 hours a month. And I think that is a good standard to keep in mind, because at the end of the day, marketing is what drives business forward, whether it's you linking to yourself or you talking about yourself somewhere else that could send you traffic. It's definitely worth the time. And I think it's important to also systematize your content promotion efforts. Like I have a checklist that on my best days I follow for every time I publish a new blog post. And it's things like, pitch this to WordPress newsletters, see if they'll include it, make sure that I've pinned it to the top of my social profiles, make sure that I created a custom graphic for Pinterest so that people share it there. It's all the little details that go into it, and the time does add up. But if you're going to put the effort into making those content assets, you should absolutely be thinking of how to use them to the fullest extent you can.
Sort of, if you're going to put it anywhere, put it everywhere.
Exactly.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you. And Jason, I see you just jotted down a note. Was that?
I'm taking tons of notes.
Something you're bringing back to the team?
Yeah, I'm taking tons of notes when Eric and Maddie are speaking, so I'll probably get the most out of this from anyone. Totally.
Talk to us, Jason, about how you decide how much your time you spend, how much time your team spends, and really thinking about. I've noticed that Paid Membership Pro has really upped its content game in the last year and a half. Talk about how you came to that decision that this is our way forward, and what the difference between what you used to spend, what your team used to spend, and what you folks do now.
Yeah. So I think like one thing Maddie talked about was having a schedule, and that's how we've started. Like whenever we've had a successful run, either in Paid Memberships Pro or some of, like the previous businesses with content, it started with the schedule of saying like right now for Paid Memberships Pro, we really strive to have, a piece of content every Tuesday and Thursday. And so during the week, it's kind of like, what do we have for Tuesday? What do we have for Thursday? And we make sure that we stick to that schedule. And that's important both from like the creative standpoint on our side to make sure that we stay in the routine of pushing out content. And also I think it's good on the, our audience side that people who, are subscribed to the mailing list, they can expect to read something every week. And so, yeah, like so I'd say start with the schedule, and whether it's twice a week or once a month, figure out what really, works for you. And I think like content wise, some people are faster and slower, or video comes more natural, and it's good to experiment and see what works for you. If just like turning your phone camera on and pointing at yourself and talking for 5 minutes works, like, that's good content too. And like I said, you can really systematize repurposing that content into other mediums. And we're trying to do more of that lately. And that's probably why it feels to you, Liam, like Paid Memberships Pro is pushing content more, is I think we've definitely been targeted on YouTube more lately and doing more video content, and then repurposing our content for like Twitter and Facebook. Pinterest is in discussion lately. Like we've ignored that one for a bit. I know that came up earlier. So yeah, that's
Can I just say that whenever I type WordPress on Pinterest, like nothing comes up. Like it is literally
an opportunity
right for the taking.
Yeah, let's do it. That's another note. That's a note I took too, because like the two I just overheard this. Like we're at home, so like Kim, who's my partner, she does more of the marketing stuff. I heard her talking about Pinterest, and I was like, oh, what are we doing with Pinterest? So I have to like, just be like, whatever you're doing, yeah, try it.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Heard it here first. Eric, talk to us about how much you decide to spend on it, and I don't know how long you've been writing, both for your own self-promotion, but also for those outlets. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I've been writing for various publications for about 5 years. So I've gotten kind of a routine down where, particularly with Specky Boy, where I'm going, I'm doing 2 original posts a week, basically. I work a few weeks ahead. I'll go for one that's going to be maybe like a tutorial or something that is based on a resource that people can use to learn or to kind of up their game, whether it's CSS or WordPress, or it may be, even a Photoshop or something like that. The other thing I'll focus on then is either a freelance business post, or sometimes it's just an opinion piece about something going on in the industry. Like when Gutenberg was coming out, that was kind of a controversial time, so I definitely spent a few hours writing about that. So I try to focus on things that, to give a variety every week. Generally, we publish 3 or 4 articles a week, plus the roundup that kind of goes out in the weekend. Usually that'll go out Thursday or Friday and kind of tide us over till Monday. And we'll mix in, like I said, downloadable things that, maybe free templates for, I think we just did one with free templates for business flyers, or logo creation assets. So the promotion for it, we really try to get it out on social media, particularly Twitter. Not a whole lot of traction on Facebook, depending on the subject. One of the things I do like to try and do, and I know this is probably one of the questions that is coming up in a little bit, but it's more, if it's a really hot topic with WordPress, I like to put it in certain Facebook groups to kind of spur discussion. Like one I did recently, probably the one you saw in post status. It was about like annoyances with WordPress plugins, and nothing to do with you at all, Jason, I promise. But just things that I found kind of like pet peeves. And so I put that in the advanced WordPress group and got a whole big discussion from all sorts of folks on it, which I think, I don't know what Jason and Maddie think, but I mean, Facebook to me seems like more niche groups seem to get the best feedback. If I just post something out there, no one's going to really come, no one's really going to respond very well. But going into those niche groups seems to really work for us. And I don't do it often. I try to save it for something that I think is really like discussion worthy. For one, just because I think it's going to be more interesting to the readers that way. And 2, if you're consistently just promoting your own stuff on a group like that, they're probably not going to be very happy with you. So I try to, be respectful of that as well, and, jump into other conversations and, become a part of the community before you just, you're there to sell them things.
So it gets back to that building trust.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So I'm going to stay with you for the next question, and it's really around tools and processes. Talk to us about what you do tools wise, processes wise, to create and share content online?
Well, once I get the content out, I will put it on my Twitter feed. I've got a pretty good community there of people who are, in the industry, and, hopefully a good target audience. I don't have nearly as many followers as some of the other folks here, I know that, but, they do tend to interact with me a lot on it. And that's kind of like what I enjoy the most, is actually writing something and having someone, comment on it, whether they agreed with it or not, or if they have something that maybe I missed, or, they have, just something to say about it. I just find that to be really a great way to build an audience and, build loyalty. But there's some other places I go to. As I said, I'll go into those Facebook groups. Webdesignernews.com is another one I love to use for a lot of the stuff that I write for other professionals. They have a daily newsletter. I really try to get things that I think are going to be included in that newsletter. I think they put like 5 or 6 posts in their newsletter every day. Goes out around noon on the East here. So I'm always thrilled when I open my email and I see something I've written in there. Post status is another one. You can submit content to them if you're a member. Otherwise, they do just tend to find interesting content as well. And I always like, there's another site too that I really like lately. It's called wpcontent.io. It's a recently built one. Ann Poulsen, who does some plugin development, started that up. It's actually, I don't know if any of you were familiar with the old managedwp.org, which was a great place to share content. Unfortunately, ManageWP kind of let it flounder a little bit and it went out. WP Content.io is actually trying to replace that community, and they're kind of just getting it off the ground now. But a nice place to look to submit your content if it's relevant to WordPress. So I definitely recommend finding create quality content that's honest, that's authentic, that reflects who you are and your experience. Don't write about things you have no idea about, because it's going to generally show through in the in the final product. And try to build community around it. That's something that we've kind of focused on the last few years, and I think it's been working for us.
Thank you. Maddie, can you tell us about your tools and processes for creating and sharing content online?
Absolutely. Yeah. What Eric mentioned, the managed WP, that was huge for getting traffic, getting comments, like all that sort of thing. And I haven't messed around too much with the new replacement, but it seems like a pretty good replacement. It seems like people are getting into it and building a community around that too. And that is on my blog post publishing checklist, is to send it over to different content distribution sites such as that. World of WordPress is another one to look into. So they it's a little bit different. They syndicate your content instead of like creating like a detailed link sort of thing to it. And so something for people who aren't super familiar with SEO, if you take your article and then you publish it on another website without the correct markup, that is a duplicate content issue that could lead to issues with indexing your website or having the other content come up ahead of yours and Google getting confused to the point where maybe they don't show either. So something to keep in mind. But if you're syndicating your content correctly, which involves the use of a canonical tag, then that can be a great way to reach another audience. Business to community is another one if you're kind of like in that like B2B, or I guess even B2C space. So it really depends on the topic, but there's probably something like that for you. You just have to do a little bit of digging. So that being said, one process that I use from the social media side of things is, and pretty much everything that's a project management task, I manage on this tool called Process Street. And what I really like about that tool is it's just super flexible. You can build whatever you want with it, essentially. And so I used to use, kind of like your typical project management tool. And I just found that like I had to keep entering in, like the due dates and the assignees and stuff. And so I use Process Street because it creates a lot of shortcuts for me to do that with these templates. And then you can run checklists off those templates. So it has all the same information that you want, and you can just repeat it. So I have this checklist on Process Street that the person who helps me with my social media, she fills out. And there's a different text area for her to put like the copy for the tweet or the Facebook post or whatever, a different one for the imagery we want to use, and she can designate a separate one for Twitter versus Facebook, LinkedIn, and I could even add like a third one and split up Facebook and LinkedIn, but I'm honestly way too lazy for that. So the other thing that I use is on that Process Street checklist is a due date or the date that it's supposed to be scheduled to go out in addition to a specific time. And then I have it set up with Zapier so that once I go in and approve all her posts, it just sends it over to Buffer and I don't even have to think about it anymore. It's just done. So whatever you can do to sort of like create those easy wins, easy, like not have to think about it systems, like, because in the past it's like things for me always break apart when it's like somebody does the work but I'm too lazy to act on it, so it's kind of just like hacking my own laziness. But other processes and tools, so another one I wanted to share that's also on my blog post publishing checklist is this tool called Q Promote. It's QUUU, 3 U's. And what's really cool about that is, as we know, Facebook organic reach has basically gone down to zero. So unless you're willing to pay, advertising fees, it's really not viable to waste your time on Facebook, with the exception of the groups. I think that's an excellent point. But that being said, Q Promote, what you do is you submit copy and imagery for your content, link back to your site, essentially formatted as a social post. And they have this network of people who are using Q Promote on the other side, which is called Q. And it's kind of like Buffer. They have the queue. They can say, okay, I like that piece of content. Yep, add that one to my queue. And then, so people are sharing your content out, and it's coming across as, not being a sponsored post, but being an organic post on their social media. And I think in general, people tend to respond a little bit better when it doesn't have that ad tag or anything on it. And so that's been actually really effective. And I will say that there are people in that Q Promote network who, like, they're only sharing stuff from Q. And so it's not as effective on those people's profiles, but a lot of people use it effectively to sort of, add extra content to whatever their planned content is. And when I go in and look at the stats, like, I'm getting real good click-through rates to the website, to whatever, client's website that I'm promoting. And so that's been a really cool value add. And I will say that their plans look expensive on like first glance, but if you sign up for their email list, they do deals all the time. So yeah, those are, I think, some of the best tools. Oh, the other ones that I would suggest from an SEO perspective, Phrase is one that I recently picked up as actually an AppSumo deal. And what it does is it analyzes the top ranking search results for a given query, and it gives you ideas for what your content should contain. So essentially you could use it as an article briefing tool in addition to a content optimization tool, because it gives you suggestions for things like keywords. It also gives you ideas for structure. It provides at a glance statistics for whatever that topic is. So that's been a game changer. ClearScope is another variation of that, where it's probably a little bit more focused on the SEO data more so than digging into like the specific search results that they're suggesting, ideas for optimizing to get better than that. But they're both kind of like two sides of the same coin. ClearScope, it's expensive. The lowest cost plan is $170 a month. But if you're creating a lot of content and you want to actually rank, then that's pennies for the benefits that it would give you. So those are kind of the top tools that I'm using right now.
Thank you so much. And Jason, can you share us about your tools and processes, please?
Yeah, definitely. A A lot of the stuff I interact with personally is lo-fi because I'm like more often handing off words to the rest of the team to make it look nice and push it out to various places. But a couple tools I've been using lately, which are good. One is called StreamYard, which we're using for video. It basically is like, you know, use it for streaming. It'll simultaneously push your video to YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, and a bunch of other sites at the same time. And it also has pretty cool interfaces for handling multiple guests and cameras and scenes and overlays of graphics and stuff. So it's really made it faster for us to say, hey, let's get on a StreamYard and talk about this topic and shoot it to YouTube as a webinar, you know. On the blogging side, I've actually used the Jetpack Twitter functionality. It goes in both directions. So they have an unroll tweet feature. So if you start like a new blog post and copy the link of one of your tweet streams into Gutenberg, it'll detect it as a tweet and kind of do an O-embed thing. And then there's an unroll button, which will take the tweet and turn it into blog content. It takes all the subsequent replies that you had, and it basically makes a blog post. So I've done it in both directions, where you make a tweet stream on Twitter, you know, that's like 10 tweets wrong, includes links and embeds, and you just click unroll and it's like perfectly formatted for a WordPress post. And then instead, everyone like, you know, I think it's called Unroll, there's a service maybe. There's a few of these where like people say like, that's a tweet stream, I don't want to read it, I'm going to read it as a blog post, these like third parties. But if you're quick, and I wasn't this morning, someone unrolled it before I even put it, at the bottom of your tweet stream, you put the link to your blog post and say, I also have this in blog here. And it goes in the other direction as well. So that's a Jetpack feature. When you publish a blog post, make it out of blocks in Gutenberg. They have like a share to Twitter feature. And in there's now an option to say like share as one tweet with a link, or share as a tweet storm or series of tweets. I forget how they word it. But when you check that, it smartly separates your blocks into, you know, 280 character chunks and pushes them out as a series of tweets. So I've done that in both directions. And I'm kind of a fan of thinking in that way, like, and the content, you know, like, you know, if I share 5 tips in a blog post, like the only number 3 is the one that's really popular, that spurs discussion and retweeting and stuff. So the activity, like, I think you get more interaction, at least through Twitter, that way. So I've used that. And then process wise, I kind of talked about it earlier, but I've been doing more of this, using video in the writing process. So we know there's like a certain topic or a group of topics that we need to talk about. Lately, like, we're launching a Black Friday product. So we had like, what are the FAQs for Black Friday sales? And there's 15 questions. And I just sat in front of a camera for an hour and answered the questions one by one. And then afterwards, I took a couple notes of things that came up and I put that in a Google Doc. And then that video and the notes we sent to, you know, basically like a lower paid contractor, you know, kind of intern style, to just transcribe and then turn it into like an essay for each question. And then we get that back as like the first draft. And it really, man, and a lot of time when we get different people on the team to do the first draft, they're like kind of nervous about it. They're like, oh, this is so like, it's ugly and it's like misspelled and like, it's like, you don't know how much it helps for someone to just give me the first draft. Cause like the brain dump, you know, and it's there, it's kind of organized and there's headings and stuff, like getting that. And then like that gets you over to writer's block. Like once you have something in front of you, like you know, whether you do it yourself or you use video and help or something like that, once you get that first draft and then you get it in front of you, like you'll be like, oh, that's bad, it needs to change. And like your brain goes into a different mode. It's not really like trying to be creative in the same way. And you can work a lot faster. So then I'll edit it or someone else on the team will edit it. And then we have kind of like a make it pretty stage and the publish stage, and pushing it out. And then what's good too is we kind of have written content that we can push to the blog and the newsletter. And then if we write a script for a video, it's way better than like the original video of me just rambling. Like, you know, I've processed it, I've read it, we figured out what the important points were, and then we rewrite the video. And even like, it's not usually me, it's Travis on our team who, you know, just is, you know, more natural in front of the camera than I am. And you know, they'll make the video and we'll share the video. So that's been our process. It's been working really well to create content and get it out there.
Fantastic. And in all the excitement, I have to admit, I've gotten myself a little bit confused. Eric, I think I already asked you the process of yours already, because you talked about Facebook groups and the like.
That's right.
So, yes, we did. Excellent. All right. So for the panelists, when you first started thinking maybe I should blog more, or maybe when you started to get into creating content for yourself or for your own self-promotion, think back and can you share what was one of your first content-driven successes, something that you created and shared online, turned into a win for you, your business, your clients? Talk to us about that. Jason, I'm going to ask you to start.
Sure. So my first WordPress blog was Investor Geeks in 2005. And it was a blog I started with a couple friends, and we were just writing about the stuff that we were learning about the stock market. We had like first-time corporate jobs and a 401k, and we're like, what is that? Like things of that nature. And one of our early popular posts, the site got really popular at one point, but one of our really popular posts was when we wrote a review of a book called Rule Number One by Phil Town. It's, it isn't a super popular book, but in the investing circles around 2005, it was like the #1 bestseller on the New York Times list. And we had written a review of it that was very in depth. It really went into, the main points of the book and talked about it a lot. And after that, we wrote like follow-ups on the book of like what Phil Town was up to, and he was on like different shows and talked about things, and we used the techniques to analyze stocks and things like that. But that was like the book took off. Like we did a review, I think because he asked it, probably was just like he sent it to a bunch of investing bloggers and asked us to write reviews. But we did a really good one, like the best one. And when his book went crazy, SEO wise back then, like our review was, almost above his website. And definitely if you said Phil Town #1 review, it was the #1 result. And so that was like a case where we piggybacked on the success of like something else outside of media that was successful. And I don't know if that was just luck or if it's kind of repeatable, but I've seen other people doing the same thing. I haven't done that so much lately in our own space. But I've definitely seen people who like, if there's room for this, like where like a really good business book, like if you write a blog post that like pairs it down, writes a better summary than the book even, or something like that, or any kind of like idea that goes viral, something that maybe like, and a good indicator that you found something like this is like if you consume it really quickly, because that's kind of key, is to like get in front of the horse on this. So if you're like, oh, I'm excited about this new thing that's coming out, and you pre-ordered it and you get it and you read it in a weekend, you could almost take advantage of that by writing like the definitive review of X and posting it out there, and getting it ahead of people. So yeah, I don't know how much luck is involved or if that's repeatable, but I think like if you follow your passion, you can really like, piggyback on what's popular out there in that sense.
Yeah, that resonates with, I wrote a review of how to swim with the sharks without getting eaten alive.
Okay.
And I still get a fair amount of traffic to my site, and that was
like during Shark Week or no?
No, it's a marketing book by Harvey McKay. Yeah. No, I don't get in the water with sharks. I have a real phobia of that. I can't even. We'll get the National Geographic episode and like turn the page where they have that massive shark face. I can't.
Yeah, it's scary. Oh, but there you go. So you did it. Yeah, now you kind of get hits on someone else's content, because you wrote a really good review.
Exactly. Eric, can you answer the question for you? What was one of your first big blogging or content creation wins?
Well, this goes way back to the early 2000s. My favorite soda as a teenager was Surge. If you remember, it was a Mountain Dew competitor. And when it started disappearing from the shelves, I actually built a website dedicated to trying to bring it back. It took a couple of years, but I ended up getting all these people to send in like tributes to it. I mean, we had people doing songs, we had people doing artwork and poems and all this crazy stuff, right? And I eventually got it into the Associated Press. It was in newspapers all across the country. I still remember the day it came out in my local paper. I went into the convenience store to buy a copy of it, and my face was on the front page of the paper. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? I was a little embarrassed, but it was also on the front page of Yahoo. So it was like this, the 15 minutes of fame, but it kind of showed me, this was pre-social media. MySpace wasn't even around yet. that you could bring people together if you did something, you know, that they cared about, even if it was frivolous like soda. I actually gave up on the site in like 2007. Some other guys started a Facebook group then and actually had Surge brought back. You could probably go into a convenience store and get like a big can of it now. And I've kind of made friends with them. They actually sent me a little care package when it came back a few years ago. But it is one of those cool things that just being able to bring people together in a very organic way, because there was no social media. So it was really all about just person to person, word of mouth. We had a bulletin board. We had, you know, a bunch of crazy people that were printing out flyers and sticking them on Coke machines. I actually ended up talking with executives at Coca-Cola and just crazy stuff like that. So that would probably be the moment that I thought, well, maybe I have some marketable talent somewhere. And it really started it got me into writing, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah, that's a great story. Do you still like Surge?
I do, but you want to know the really weird, ironic thing about it? The year it came back, the previous year, I found out I had diabetes, so I can't really drink it very much, but I can go look at it in the store, so that's pretty cool.
Life is cruel. Life is cruel.
No diet Surge? No,
Yeah, right.
There is, if you go to certain Burger Kings, you can get a Surge Zero.
Oh, there you go.
In the fountain, so there is that.
There you go.
Maddie, talk about one of your early successes, if you would.
Sure. So I had this lifestyle blog. I grew up in Illinois in the Chicago suburbs. And so it was all about just like living in Chicago and trying to maximize your budget. And the whole reason I started that blog, part of it was I needed a creative outlet because I used to have sales jobs and it was like almost what I wanted, but like definitely not what I wanted. And so I was just trying to prove to myself, I guess, that I could do digital marketing, and I was trying to figure out how to be effective at it. So I was learning the very basics of SEO, and I decided to try to optimize for the query free Lollapalooza tickets, which for those of you who don't know, Lollapalooza is just this big music festival. I think it's like 4 days in a row now in Chicago, which is like way too many. But back in the day, it was 3 days, which was just enough. And so I kind of just, you know, like put my article together and sort of like, it was like a clickbait title, but what I was trying to get across was you could volunteer at the music festival and get in and save a lot of money. And I just looked it up on Google and it's still ranking number 4 for the query. So, nice. You know, it all comes back to like, you know, the foundations, you know, following the rules. And if you do that, and if you know, if you're a student of SEO, and it's actually kind of amazing how things change all the time, but the fundamentals never change. It's all about high quality content, and any sort of future algorithm updates that happen only make that more true. So if you worry more about creating content that really satisfies whatever the user was looking for, you don't really have to concern yourself too much with like the technicalities of it, because Google's getting smarter and it needs less help to sort of parse the context. But another good example, kind of along the same lines, is for that print on demand store I have. We put together an article about like the funniest city names across the world. And again, I haven't updated that. The publishing date, I'm just looking at Google right now, is from June 2017. It's number 4 because it was built with best practices in mind. And it all started back in the day, you know, I think 2015 is when that Lollapalooza article was written. And that's what I bring to all my content projects today, just those same best practices.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That's exciting stuff. So we've spent the better part of an hour getting into how to get into this. What's the value of it? How do you go about doing it? I just want a little bit of a check as we wrap up the conversation and talk about some of the risks and challenges of creating content for online promotion. And I guess, Eric, I'm going to come back to you and ask you to address that initially. What are some of the challenges or risks for the kind of content that you're creating?
Well, I think sometimes the challenge for me is finding something original to write about, especially in the web design industry. There's so many things, you know, everybody's got their, you know, top 15 WordPress themes, or their, you know, their tutorial on how to do such and such with CSS. So trying to find something original, trying to find something from your own experience is what I, you know, that's kind of what I preach. And as far as the content itself, I mean, the challenge is really making it authentic. You know, even if you are trying to sell a product with it, make it quality. Don't, you know, as Maddie was talking about, I mean, if you do the best practices right from the beginning, you don't have to worry about SEO changes so much. Don't come across as making, you know, cheesy sales pitches in the content. Try to be, you know, make it useful. And I think Jason was talking about this as well, just trying to get, you know, answer the reader's question and give them the advice that they came to look for. And, you know, if you have a lot of content and you want to recycle it over time, that can, you know, that stuff can get old depending on the topic. So before you know, you want to repost that on your front page or send it out to social media, you know, just make sure to go through it a time or two again and see what may have changed during that time, because otherwise it may not be quite as relevant to the audience as it could be.
Thank you. Jason, how about you? What are some of the risks and challenges for Paid Membership Pro?
Yeah, I think it's related a bit to what Eric was talking about, but maybe like there's something I've been thinking about recently, and I forget where I heard this, but the advice was don't be afraid to sound repetitive. So I know like Eric's looking for new ideas, but it's like maybe the old ideas are good, and definitely double check things if you're going back into old content to push out, which is such a great thing to do. You know, like on those weekly meetings, we're figuring out what to push out Tuesday and Thursday. You know, a lot of our newer readers didn't get that great post from 2 years ago. So we have kind of a best of like the best 50 things we've ever published. And we try to, you know, filter that list into new readers and stuff like that. But anyway, I forget the context where someone said, don't be afraid to sound repetitive. And it's something I've been thinking about, like when I'm on, you know, interviews or publishing things, people might ask me the same questions, you know, and I've so many times told stories about like my WordPress origin story, how I got into WordPress or how we switched from consulting the products. And I fought for a while to like, oh, I want to say something unique each time. And it's almost like, it was like ego of some sort where I think like people are following me around and watching all my content, but like besides my mom, that's not really the case. You know, like every new outlet is a different, you know, it's more about their audience. And if they haven't heard like the good stories yet, like, let me just like really crank it home and tell it better, even better, you know, and get better at telling it over and over. So I've been trying to ease up a little bit on that. And I don't know if this helps you, Eric, like about like feeling like I have to come up with something unique all the time. I'm like, maybe it's I should listen a little bit when people keep asking me the same questions and be like, I might be onto something here and I should just keep trying to do this better. And I think, since I've been thinking about that too, I noticed with some content creators who are like crazy prolific and write every day, like Seth Godin or James Altucher, or there's a few of these out there. If you follow them religiously, like you'll see a post and you're like, you wrote about this. Like you're like a hitch in your brain. You're like, you know, like they woke up and maybe they don't even remember it. You know, like they've already written about like this phenomenon or this like thing in the market or something going on. And they probably started from scratch and wrote it again. And this is like the version of this advice on, you know, January, you know, whatever, November 9th of 2020. So yeah, so I've been trying to embrace that and maybe not worry so much about being repetitive.
Yeah, I like that. And props to getting your mom to watch all your videos. I can't get my
That's
mother
great.
to listen, even tune into any of my podcasts. So well done, you. You're doing something right.
Yeah.
Maddie, how about the risks and challenges for you and for your clients too? Maybe if you can touch on both of those, please.
Sure. Yeah, so I think just to add on to what Jason was saying, I think like the thing that I try to keep in mind when addressing these repetitive topics is like what's changed about when I said it before and now I'm saying it again. The audience, you know, that's something to consider. Like maybe they would be interested in a different part of, for example, my WordPress origin story. So I think it's like what's changed personally for you since you last told that story, or like just like looking back on it, and then what I just said. But challenges, I think for me and my business, something that I've been exploring as I sort of transition from being a freelancer to being an agency owner is, how do I create consistent high quality content? What systems, processes, tools, etc. can I deploy to achieve that? And so like the greatest investment of time and energy for me has been in creating my own style guide. So I use AP style as sort of like the fallback for anything that I don't really have an opinion on, but I want to be consistent about. Like maybe I'll see that writers are handling it differently, and I just want to have like one answer for that particular thing. But my style guide, it's like 10 pages long now. It's organized by things like, how do we do headings? How do we address links? What do we do for images? What words do we avoid? I actually have somebody on my team who's also creating additional style guides that are just for things like WordPress capitalizations, besides the obvious, capital P, dang it. But, so it's stuff like that. It's creating resources that I expect my team to use, but I also have checks in place for them to use in terms of like the editors that I hire that then go over their work and then sort of like reinforce the style guide. What was the other thing I was going to say about challenges and risks? I think it's worth retouching on the idea of not just creating content, but creating a plan to update content. So like I said, that like Lollapalooza article I wrote in 2015, still ranking at the top of its query. But, maybe I write something about, like an example that comes to mind is I wrote a piece for my website about Wix SEO versus WordPress SEO, like which platform is kind of like better able to handle that. And like, that's already outdated. I think I wrote it like last year, that's due for an update. And so I don't know if it's a risk or a challenge well, I would say it is a challenge to have the right mix of new content versus content that you have to kind of keep an eye on and sort of make a plan for when you're going to update it. And I will say that the trend has been with many of my clients that, every month we have X amount of new content pieces, but we also have at least one rewrite. So, and it's not because it's bad content, it's because their industry is constantly changing. There's new stuff to think about, and Google prefers it, is really like the bottom line. They want to, when they're recommending queries to you, it's in their best interest to sort of show the latest, greatest, most updated. So that's what I got.
Fantastic. Eric, Jason, Maddie, thank you all so very much. This was really, really helpful. Absolutely. At this point, I'll just turn it open to general questions. We're a small enough group that I think we can just selectively unmute ourselves and pipe up with a question or two. I certainly have questions, but I'm going to let others go first. All right, I'll go.
Okay. Amy.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Excellent. Thank you,
There we
Amy.
go. So I was moving rooms. Thank you all so much. It's been just really, really informative. Some of it is just out there for me to grasp and to take all in. But I'm really intrigued by the little bit that was touched on with Pinterest. And what direction do you see that going, and the best way to approach it with WordPress?
Sure. So I think with Pinterest, you can think of it a lot like SEO content. It's a matter of optimizing for keywords in the pin, in the board you pin it on, in the description of the board that you pin it on. And so one resource, a free resource I could recommend to you is called Pinterest Keyword Tool, something like that. And you can kind of go in and see like what are keywords that people are actually searching on Pinterest, and those that are ripe for optimization. But like I was saying earlier, if you go on Pinterest and you type WordPress plugin, like Blogger plugins, or like whatever long tail form of that keyword, it is so sparse, but people on Pinterest tend to be bloggers who, you know, are trying to figure out how to optimize their WordPress website. So that's what I'm saying. It's just such a like low hanging fruit. And, you know, like one thing that I do for my clients, or at least at one point I was trying to, was seeing whose content I could repin on Pinterest, like on their behalf. And like none of my clients have Pinterest optimized images. And part of it is it's not intuitive necessarily to do that on WordPress unless you're using a plugin like Social Warfare or whatever, which gives you the option to create like a Pinterest specific image. There are some workarounds even without plugins, but the point being that just like nobody's thinking about it. And so honestly, they're all missing out on that traffic because Pinterest is like the third most used search engine or something like that. It is a huge driver of commerce. I mean, in terms of all the social networks, it's the one that has the most sales happening from it. It's probably tied with Instagram, but I would say even maybe more so than Facebook. So yeah, I mean, there's just like a lot to go with, or a lot to get out of Pinterest. I do have a class on Skillshare. So if you want to follow up with me after, I could send you a link to that. And it just goes through like my Pinterest SEO strategy, but it's the same strategy that I used. I actually have my husband, I delegated it to him for our print on demand store. And we have 2 million monthly viewers on our Pinterest account just by, again, looking for keywords, optimizing for keywords, and then being consistent with pinning. That's all it is. It's, I promise you, it's not rocket science. It's just putting that for forth is like the hardest part.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Who else? I'll share one, and I'll just throw it out generally. You all started your content creation efforts in a single place, and then it sounds like you develop additional skills and places and approaches and flows that work for you now. Knowing as you sit where you are today and have the value and of hindsight, where would you have told yourself, your younger self, to start? If younger self was starting today, what would you say? This younger Jason, younger Maddie, younger Eric, this is the skill, the one skill that you need to start with. The others you can build on, the others you can come with. Where would you start that journey today?
Probably confidence. Honestly, I mean, that's so much of it. You know, you kind of don't know what you're capable of, especially when you're younger. I started out in web design at 18. So, and I know, Maddie, you started out really young as well, right? So all the things that you don't quite understand about yourself yet. Sometimes you're in such a hurry to you know, quote unquote make it that you know, you kind of skip over the details. But I think if you have the confidence to slow down a little bit and actually, you know, work on your craft and you know, you're going to make mistakes, and just to be accepting of that. I think that's definitely something I would have told myself, is just to chill out a little bit and, you know, don't panic.
Maddie or Jason, anything to add?
I'm not big on this question always gets me because I don't know, I'm not a fan of like changing my past self. You know, I always think about like the butterfly effect. I'm like, oh, even if I knew.
Well, how about the young person that's just joined the company and you're trying to provide some professional guidance.
And I think like, you know, Eric called it confidence, but like another version of it is patience. Like I feel like a lot of the tips we've been sharing about creating content and getting it out there, it's not, this content marketing thing doesn't usually work overnight. It usually takes a long time for like the content you wrote a year ago to get into the system of Google and getting shared and stuff like that. And so it kind of takes a lot of perseverance to keep going at it. But the dividends pay later. And And actually, I mean, maybe I would tell myself I did, you know, Maddie looked at one of her old posts and saw it was still ranked. And I looked up that rule number 1 post and we're not on the first page. And that might have to do with because we let the Investor Geeks blog go offline for like 2 months and no one noticed. Like it really went dormant. It kind of got erased from the internet. But I've noticed, like, I wrote about investing in 2005 and, you know, I was answering a lot of questions. These things didn't like disappear. Like people are still, and I think Eric talked about this too, like the same questions and same content, same business advice is still pertinent. And so it was like, man, it was really, I didn't hold on. Like we had the #1 search result for a lot of these investing topics way back in 2005 and 2006. And then we moved on to other things and like, man, it'd be super valuable nowadays to like, you know, have like the top ranking blog post on like, should I rent or, you know, buy a house or something like that. So maybe I didn't really value, you know, some of the stuff I had early on in my career to really, you know, I could have tried to maintain some of that stuff.
Yeah. And I would say like, implementing rank tracking tools is kind of like the kick in your butt that you might need to update that content, care about content, whatever. Because it's like whenever I notice a change in rankings, that's a signal to me like that content needs to be updated or changed or maybe gotten rid of. I don't know. My advice to my younger self or another younger person like me would be, don't wait for somebody to like make a position for you. Don't wait for permission. Just like go out and experiment and try stuff, because like that's how I found the most success with content marketing. Yes, you know, I followed best practices and I looked towards experts who had sort of like, you know, trailblazed before me. But again, I was in a sales job and I really hated it and I just wanted to do something else. And so, you know, I could have waited, I guess. The company that I quit when I went freelance full time and, you know, still am doing that, they were actively actually working to make a position for me, but I just didn't have a deadline or, you know, a specific timeline, and I just got tired of it. So like, live your dreams. That's what I got.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, Eric and Jason and Maddie, thank you so much. You've all been in the hot seat there for 90 minutes or so. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, and I'll ask the others on the call to unmute ourselves, and we'll give you a round of applause for a very, very valuable.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.